My name is Holger Brockmann, and I met Brett Nielsen back in the early 70s at a party in Palm Beach. Brett is a survivor. Aren't we all, I hear you say? Well, Brett is special. Brett survived that awful drug called thalidomide, which was given to mothers way back in the 60s to ease morning sickness symptoms. The drug was unproven and the results disastrous. In Brett's case, it meant he was born without arms. Brett has done much more than just survive. He's a proud father first and foremost. He's worked in television and radio. He's performed, written and recorded music in his own recording studio, which he built on his property in Mullumbimby in northern New South Wales. He's recorded and released a series of nature sounds. He even established an earth-moving company. I caught up with Brett when he visited Kerrabee Homestead in the Upper Hunter. He was on his way home from Canberra, having attended the national apology to the survivors of thalidomide delivered at Parliament House by Prime Minister Anthony Albanese on behalf of all Australians. You've had a huge week, but before we get on to that, let's just go back a little. We met when you were about 17. That would have been in, what year was that?
77.
77,
1977, yeah. Party at Palm Beach.
It was a brilliant party.
Yeah.
In fact, the people that invited us from memory went on to become part of a famous band, Tim Ferriss.
The Ferriss brothers.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then became In Excess. You've done many things. You've built a recording studio, you became a music producer, you became a musician, and there's much more. Tell me more.
It was not so much that I necessarily wanted to do all of these things, it was that needed to keep the bank manager from the door, the wolf from the door.
That's always a good motivator.
Yeah, always. Yeah. So I started off in radio at 2BS in Bathurst as a panel operator,
Oh, okay.
And then I worked for ABC Television in Sydney.
Right.
For a while.
Just going back to radio, 2BS Bathurst, you would have been pretty young then. How old?
I was 16.
16? Okay, so that was even before we met?
Yeah.
Oh, wow, okay.
Yeah.
And then you went on the air there for a while too, didn't you?
No, they didn't think
Didn't
my
let
voice
you
was
on
good
the air?
enough. No.
Oh, right.
I got to do the weather forecast for the Central Western Slopes and Plains.
Great.
Yeah, not much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you worked in television. What did you do in TV?
I was a trainee for ABC Television's. I was an operations officer grade 1. That ain't get any lower. No. From there, I got retrenched, not that long after I started. There was big retrenchments going on in 78. And then I started the same course next door at Gore Hill Tech the following year. And then discovered Mullumbimby.
Oh,
Yeah.
Okay. And you moved up there at that point?
I did. I moved there in September 79.
Right.
Yeah.
Beautiful part of the world.
It's gorgeous. And it was a very, very different town in those days. There was the hippies and the straights. And
which one were you?
I was a hippie. Yeah, long-haired hippie.
That's right. I remember you did have pretty long hair.
Yeah. It was interesting. There was incredible cross-section of people who live in Mullumbimby and around the area. And these days, all these years later, the hippies and the straights are sort of like one, and all of the new people with, who are so alternative, they've got children called wholemeal and muesli, are the other lot, Yeah, it's funny.
And once you got up there, what did you do?
I was playing music. I was doing 4 gigs a week in restaurants and pubs and
that's pretty good.
all of that sort of stuff.
A lot of musos could only dream of doing 4 gigs a week.
I think it's sort of an apprenticeship that all musicians should do to learn how to work with an audience and all of that sort of stuff. Yeah. And then I went to Denmark for a year or something, and went and annoyed all my relatives and all of that sort of stuff.
Because your ethnic background, for want of a better word, is Danish, isn't it?
Yeah, my father's father was Danish. And then after I got back from Europe, I eventually just had this great idea to buy a backhoe. Learned how to use it.
Had you built your studio by this stage, or did you do that later?
No, I built the studio in 85.
Right.
Yeah, so I'd been working the backhoe a couple of years by then. And then in 88, I put out my first album, Lunch on Lamington, which was bird calls and instrumental music.
That's right, I remember. Yeah. I remember it well.
And then in 1990, I got a gig to go and record bird calls for Fern Gully, the last rainforest. So we set off on an 11,500 kilometre journey in 20 days, recording bird calls. Yeah, ended up putting out, 6 or 8 albums or something before things changed a bit. And then...
how did they change?
My wife ran away from home.
Oh, that's not very friendly.
Oh, well, these things happen. After that, I got together with another lovely lady and we had a child. And then I started doing some corporate speaking work.
That's right, you did motivational talks, didn't you?
Corporate motivational speaking to audiences up to 12,000. Yeah.
Audiences we can only dream of.
Yeah, I ended up putting out 10 albums, whatever it takes to keep the bank manager from the door.
Absolutely. And if you enjoy it, all the better.
Roses are red and violets are blue. Nobody does it for me like you do.
Most people know you're a thalidomide survivor. How did your children, how did they react? And friends would have asked them.
The first time my daughter came home asking what she should say to children who asked what happened to my arms, I said, darling, be creative. And 10 years later, she was in high school and her teacher asked her, so what happened? And she started to say, well, he was in North Queensland and there was a huge crocodile when one of the other kids interrupted and said, sir, everyone knows she's just joking because everyone knows it was a skydiving accident. It's great.
Now, last week was a huge week for you. The Prime Minister apologised to all survivors of thalidomide.
62 years ago today, the 29th of November 1961, was the day thalidomide was withdrawn from sale in Australia. Every day between then and now, Australians affected by thalidomide have been owed an apology. Today, they will receive that. Today, at long last, Australia will say sorry. I want to acknowledge and welcome all the thalidomide survivors and their families here with us in the Parliament.
And what were your feelings when you heard that this was actually going to happen? Because I think, am I right in saying you had mixed feelings at first?
Yes. I mean, one side of me was sort of like a little bit sort of, the Prime Minister's 3 years younger than me. Nice guy. And so for him to apologise for something that happened before he was born, it's like, really, but it was good. I thought his speech was quite heartfelt and felt genuine. And
what was the feeling you got from your fellow travellers there in Canberra?
The feeling I think we all had is it's going to take a few weeks to sort of sort all of this out, to, what's the word? Process it all.
Process.
Yeah. I mean, everyone's pretty, well, I guess most people are pretty happy with the result. And
because it was fought for.
It was fought for years. And, the Australian government, hasn't really been there for anyone of the thalidomiders ever, really. The English apologised through the Parliament to their thalidomide community in, I think, 2012 or something, 2011. Grudenthal, who made thalidomide, apologised in 2012, and, here we are, 2020.
Took them a while.
Yeah, these things can't be rushed, I'm sure. But, yeah, no, it's, it's all good. It's all good, but I guess the thing which prevails with the thalidomide community is that because there wasn't people running around wanting to do shit all the time, we all sort of learnt to get on with life.
Thalidomide.
Every woman must be aware that it's most important that they do not take this drug.
We're looking at the very worst disaster inflicted by medicine.
Isn't it a pity? Isn't it a shame how we break each other's hearts and cause each other pain? How we take each other's love.
Try on with this piece of put over.
Without thinking anymore. Forgetting to give back. Isn't it a pity? Some things take so long.
Grunenthal didn't apologize to its victims until 2012.
Now how can I explain?
I don't consider life without arms either. I just live it.
When not too many can see we're all the same. And because of all their tears, their eyes can't hope to see the beauty that surrounds them. Isn't it a pity?
It doesn't matter what happens to you in your life, it matters how you deal with it.
What do you want to be when you're 50?
Happy.
The company Grunenthal don't want people to know that this was manufactured as a drug that was used originally to torture Allied soldiers in the war.
Isn't it a pity?
Researchers report that thalidomide children continue to be born.
How we break each other's hearts.
What many saw as corporate greed at its worst.
And cause each other pain. How we take each other's love without thinking anymore.
It's an absolute disgrace.
To give back. Isn't it a pity? Forgetting to give back. Isn't it a pity?
I would have liked to have seen it never used again.
Forgetting to give back.
Do you have much in common with the group that got together in Canberra last week? Now you're a sort of a kind of a get on with it guy, as demonstrated by what you've done. Not everybody thinks of getting a backhoe. From getting a backhoe to building a studio to recording, You know, that's thalidomide or no thalidomide. That's pretty cool.
You know, thalidomide went right across the population, rich, poor, all sorts of people were affected by it, and so there's no real group of people that you go, oh, they've got a whole lot in common with that particular person. You know what I mean? But
sure.
The
so you probably talk about the weather when you get together. That's one thing you have got in common.
Yeah, exactly. I guess if you took a bunch of 50 people or 150 people or whatever it is out of the pub or out of the RSL or something, I mean, you'd have the same diversity between them all as you have with the thalidomide. There's a couple of the crew who I'm mates with, which is great, yeah.
Your parents. Now, you know, I haven't met them, but I imagine they're wonderful people because they've given you an attitude and a way of handling life that's pretty special. I mean, and I know your dad was pretty special. What can you remember has come out of all of that? Did they drum something into you in particular on how to approach life or not?
It's funny, there was never, ever an excuse for not doing something. I don't want to do that, you know. I mean, my mother was really full on, you know. I mean, they both were, but, you know, Mum would say things to me like, you know, Brett, I don't care if you do the washing up with your ears. It's your turn to do the washing up.
Yeah.
Make it happen, you know. Dad was pretty full on too. He was, you know, larger than life, and was like, just fucking do it, you know.
Yeah.
Don't talk about it.
Because they were go-getters too. They were business people, weren't they?
Yeah, my father was an engineer, mechanical engineer, and he had a business in Sydney, making cranes and stuff. So he could have organised any modifications to anything, and he said,
when you're talking about modifications, we're talking about modifications to compensate
for not having arms. Yeah, you know, I mean, the whole thing of, you know, low door handles and special door locks and special bathroom facilities and modified cars and, you know, all of that sort of thing. Dad could have done anything, but he went, nah, you got to just get on with it and do it, work it out, because if, you know, you can only drive one car, you'll be fucked. You know, you go and try and hire a car in, you know, wherever, you won't be able to drive it.
Interesting. Wasn't there an incident when you were overseas where somebody wouldn't give you a car?
Yeah, that was a bit frustrating. I tried to hire a car in Northern England.
You had a licence, you know?
I had a licence, and that's all that should have been relevant.
Yeah. So you walked in the door, they made a judgment, and that was it?
Yep, instantly.
You hadn't struck that anywhere?
Oh, look, I've been thrown out of restaurants for using my feet to eat.
No.
Oh, yeah.
You're joking.
No, heaps of times. You know, not for a long time, but... I've been thrown out of restaurants in Sydney and Brisbane and all sorts of things.
Really?
Yeah.
Tell me tell me about the first time. What went through your mind?
Oh.
You must have been terribly hurt.
Yeah. It didn't feel good.
No.
Didn't feel good. You know, the being discriminated against, you know. I kind of figure I, in a funny sort of way, know what it's like to be black, you know.
Sure.
You know, for employment, for all sorts of things.
Absolutely. I sometimes forget that you don't have arms because I don't think about it, and then I get terribly embarrassed, you know.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't make a big deal of it. It's like, you know, and shouldn't, you know.
Of course.
It's, you know, you do what you do.
Now, you've been thrown out of restaurants, which just boggles the mind. What other discrimination have you suffered, or has there been other discrimination?
Oh, yeah, I mean, sort of weekly basis, really, isn't it? You know, I mean,
Tell me.
monthly basis. I don't know. I mean, all sorts of things, you know, just where people look and can't imagine living a life without arms and actually just getting on with it, you know. So, you know, driving was a huge thing to jump over. You know, the RTA just shit themselves when I turned up at 16 and 9 months. And Chief Driving Examiner Pat Toohey, the first time we went and saw Pat at the Rosebery office, I think it was, in Sydney, he looked at me and looked at the car and sort of insisted on, it was either 9 or 11 modifications to be made to a car, including putting the steering wheel on the floor and, you know, on and on it went. And that's before he'd taken me for a drive or anything. And he wanted all of that done before he'd give me a test. And Dad was there, of course, and he said, well, look, if that's the way you're going to handle it, fabulous, that's cool. I'm going to ring Channel 9, 7 and 10. How do you spell your surname? And so then they decided they might give me a little test just to see what happened, and ended up with a provisional licence, P-plate licence, without ever having a learner's permit or a driving lesson.
Have you had encounters with that you remember with Constable Plod?
Yeah. The odd policeman's pulled me over. It's really funny. And said, driver, we were just wondering why you're driving the vehicle with your toes. You know, the things that go through your mind. I was just on my way to report my arms are stolen. Need to look for a stolen arms dealer or a shonky second-hand dealer or something, you know.
Yeah. You've used that before.
I have. It's funny when the very rare times that I sort of come across someone who hasn't got any arms, like me, it cracks me up that my first thought is, oh, poor bastard, wonder how he manages, you know.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so I get it that people go, oh, fuck, you know.
There must have been some other interesting encounters you've had with people.
Yeah, there's heaps. But one that comes to mind is I had to go to hospital for something, you know, to the emergency department, and sat there because I wasn't bleeding well enough or something for hours and hours and hours. And it was cold. I had a jacket on. And after waiting for, I don't know, 4 or 6 hours or something, they said, come in here, lie down there. And I did, on the, you know, the bed thing. And there was a emergency doctor and an emergency nurse. And I'm there with them. And they said, can you take your jacket off, please? And I said, sure. So I just sat up. The jacket left on the floor, and they both went, whoa!
Brett's now back in Mullumbimby, a beautiful part of Australia, still doing what he loves best, playing and recording music in his studio. He's also spending a lot of time swimming in his recently completed indoor pool, or aquatic centre as he calls it. Brett Nielsen is living happily ever after.